Kath started by writing the topic for the lesson on the board. She still seemed anxious and annoyed. She used a verbal signal to let the class know that they should be ready to listen. She told them to face the front, then immediately walked to the back of the classroom. While she addressed the class, she walked around the room. Her movement, combined with her impatience, seemed to intimidate some of the pupils. When she asked pupils,
"Now, who's going to give me an example?"
pupils were reluctant to respond. They seemed worried about how she might react to their answers. Several pupils did raise their hands to offer an answer, but Kath chose to ask Kirsty, coming up to her from behind. When Kirsty tried to explain that she had been absent last lesson, her manner seemed to annoy Kath and provoked a negative and sarcastic response.
What we did.
She only came back today.
I wasn't talking to you, Anita.
Anita tried to defend her friend from what she perceived to be unjust treatment. The lesson was delayed while Kath asked rhetorical questions of Anita, which Anita answered under her breath. This exchange led Kath to issue a general reminder to the class.
You all know the rules. I won't have anyone shouting out, especially when it's got nothing to do with you, all right?
She scanned the class looking for pupils who needed redirecting and focused on Mike,
Mike, sit up!
which resulted in looks and grimaces passing between pupils.
So, Anita,
Continuing to speak from behind some pupils, Kath suggested that Anita should give a definition of a two-dimensional shape.
It's like a drawing.
Anita set about answering the question confidently, but because Kath was behind her, she could not see that she was disappointed by her definition and had no intention of accepting it. Kath's response to Anita's answer was again sarcastic, and she invited the class to collude with her in this.
Did anyone understand a word of that?
Jason's grimace seemed to demonstrate how the class felt at this point. Instead, Kath provided the class with her own definition of a two-dimensional shape, turning unexpectedly on Ryan to check for understanding by asking him to repeat what she had just said. Ryan might have been justified in thinking Kath was still talking to Anita, as she used Anita's name at the beginning of her definition.
A two-dimensional figure, Anita, has length and breadth, but no depth. What
The
did I just
resulting
say,
interchange with Ryan disrupted the flow of the lesson again and affected the concentration of the class. Pupils were confused when Kath referred back to the definition she had given and directed them to write it down.
Write it down, all of you.
This appeared to be a spur-of-the-moment decision. Without allowing pupils time to write, Kath started to ask them for examples of two-dimensional shapes.
So, Mike, give me an example of a two-dimensional shape.
A rectangle, miss?
Correct.
Correct answers received a dismissive response. Incorrect answers received a scathing comment. Amy looked particularly anxious as she tried to provide an example, and class members became concerned for each
Another
other.
one.
Can you tell us what we have to write down again, please, miss?
Anita's request for clarification was refused, and Kath told her that she should have listened properly,
Another two-dimensional
which Anita
shape.
seemed to feel was unfair.
What should she have said, Matthew? No
Alice tried to help Matthew
idea.
avoid Kath's
You're
displeasure
not
by writing down the
listening.
answer for him on her own whiteboard.
Did I tell you to write anything down?
Kath accepted Alice's efforts and showed her work to the class, but she concluded this exchange by shouting at Mike.
I'll tell you again. Right, everyone. Close
While
your
Alice
eyes.
retrieved her work from the floor. Kath moved into the next phase of the lesson without checking that pupils had written down the definition. From the front of the class, she instructed pupils to close their eyes.
It's a simple enough instruction. Close your eyes.
She provided no explanation of why this was necessary. This caused a ripple amongst the class. As surprised and puzzled, they tried to comply, while silently communicating their uncertainty to each other. They were obviously uncomfortable, and therefore easily distracted.
Billy, I'd like you to close your eyes as well, please.
Billy looked anxiously to Mrs. Latimer. Kath expressed her annoyance at their discomfort.
It's perfectly straightforward.
Kath was just about to describe the visualization exercise when Sally arrived.
Okay, year 8. Two-dimensional shapes. Eyes front. Now, who's going to give me an example? Come on!
I feel frustrated when I observe a lesson like this. Kath is an excellent curriculum organiser and planner. Her knowledge of mathematics is second to none, and she achieves high levels of success with her sixth form group. It was partly my fault.
I wasn't talking to you.
Kath is still annoyed and frustrated that my phone call made her late for her lesson, and she's let her bad mood become the theme of the lesson.
You all know the rules.
I want classes like 8PT to be encouraged to enjoy maths and feel able to make mistakes when they are struggling to grasp difficult concepts. But in this lesson, the atmosphere is tense, and pupils are unable to relax and engage in the learning.
Perhaps you can define a two-dimensional shape.
Well, it's like a drawing and it's flat on the page. There's no front and back to it.
Did anyone understand a word of that? A two-dimensional figure, Anita, has length and breadth, but no depth. What did I just say?
Kath gave instructions and asked questions in a way chosen to catch pupils out rather than help their understanding.
Write it down.
The only praise she gave was, unfortunately, tainted by
Give
sarcasm.
me an example of a two-dimensional shape.
A rectangle, miss?
Correct. Amy.
It seems to me that Kath has managed to communicate through her aggressive manner and sarcastic negative comments that 8PT are just too much trouble to teach.
Two-dimensional shape.
A cube, miss.
No. A cube has depth as well as length and breadth. Close your eyes.
I was particularly concerned about the effect of this lesson on Billy.
Billy, I'd like you to close
If he
your
becomes
eyes,
anxious
please.
or distressed, it could jeopardise the efforts we are making to include him in mainstream classes. I'll ask Mr. Dillon, the Sanko, and Mrs. Latimer to meet Kath to review Billy's needs and the plans we've made for his full inclusion. I'm also concerned about the effect of Kath's teaching style on her
Now,
health.
I want you all to
She seems stressed.
visualise
She doesn't seem to be enjoying her job.
equilateral
Nobody
triangle.
gains anything from this.
I don't want any
As well as the
questions.
negative effects on pupils' learning, if all Kath's lessons are like this, she'll be going home at the end of the day exhausted and
Visualise a
miserable.
right equilateral
I wish Kath would get
triangle.
involved with one of the informal groups staff have set up to share ideas about how to manage difficult situations. Or maybe even attend some kind of stress management group.
Okay, year 8.
Neither the pupils nor the teacher enjoyed this lesson.
Eyes front.
The head tells me that pupils who have previously been successful in mathematics seem to be underachieving in Kath's lessons.
Dealing with this last week, so I expect you all
I know
to
Kath feels that many more pupils could be successful if some of the more difficult pupils were removed from the class.
Last week, miss.
But on closer examination, I think that it is Kath's response to low-level, often trivial incidents that initiate and maintain a negative climate for learning. I've noticed that pupils seem reluctant to contribute to discussions or to answer questions, and rarely ask for help if they're stuck because they are unsure of the response they will get. This class gets praise, encouragement and reassurance from each other rather than the teacher. In this part of the lesson, pupils continued to try to please Kath, though this was difficult for them to achieve. Kath's attempts to persuade the class to collude with her in her criticism of individual pupils failed, and instead resulted in a teacher versus pupils atmosphere, which did not motivate or encourage pupils to do their best.
Did anyone understand a word of that? A two-dimensional figure, Anita, has length.
I think Kath is making a mistake in alienating and belittling some of the well-motivated pupils, such as Anita. Anita is one of the pupils that Kath finds difficult. But pupils like Anita, who are natural leaders and respected by their peers, can be a powerful influence in the classroom. Kath would be wise to work to develop a more positive relationship with her. Vulnerable pupils, like Billy, Amy and Matthew, also found it difficult to concentrate on their work. They were too busy keeping an eye on Kath's behaviour, hoping they wouldn't get caught out and wondering what would happen if they got something wrong. The danger is that this class will begin to feel discouraged and angry. The lack of encouragement will lead them to interpret Kath's frustration and annoyance as low expectations of them in every respect. Her actions are already leading them to believe they are stupid, badly behaved and a waste of space. I think Kath needs to learn about how she questions the class and responds to their answers. This is a powerful skill on several levels. It can promote a positive and encouraging climate for learning, and it can engage and motivate pupils to make the most of their learning opportunities.